Hello, panel. My question is, what is the right level of immigration to allow into this country? What is the balance between pursuing economic growth versus controlling cost of living pressures for our current residents?
Melinda.
Well, the first thing I'd say is we haven't had much immigration for the last couple of years, and we still have house prices going up and we still have cost prices going up. So there's a little bit more nuance to this, I think. Look, David, let me tell you a bit about the conversations I'm having with business at the moment. And what we're hearing is that skill shortages are really a real challenge for them.
The business is desperate to bring in more skilled migrants, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, what they're talking about is the fact that the investment decisions that they're making are being influenced by whether or not they think they can get the skills they need. And if I give you one example, you know, businesses who accelerated their digitisation during COVID for all the right reasons now want to embed those technologies, they want to be able to leverage those, and they're not being able to access the skills that they need. I'm also talking to large businesses that run global businesses. They're worried that when borders open, that the workers that they have that want to pursue opportunities overseas are actually going to leave faster than they can get people in. So it's a really big issue. We found that in our own members that we surveyed, and we think it's something that really needs to be addressed.
So let's hear from, well, Terri Butler, you first. Would Labor increase the skilled migration intake?
Yeah, look, I think what's interesting out of the COVID international borders issues has been how much difficulty it's caused. You know, Melinda said that we've still seen all of the inflation, notwithstanding the sharp decrease in immigration, but there's been also some very obvious difficulties arising from the fact that people can't necessarily rely on immigration and short-term skilled migration in the way that they used to be able to, and that's happened throughout the labour market. And so because there's just fewer people coming in with those specific skills that there's shortages for, that's also having a knock-on effect in all sorts of occupations. So I'd say that firstly, I think with respect to the questioner, it's not as simple as a kind of a binary between increasing immigration on the one hand or having less pressure on the other.
Have you worked out what Labor would do?
Look, I think that, I mean, obviously I'll defer to Christina and Andrew on this, but from my perspective, as someone who represents a really multicultural community, who represents a community that I think is really open to immigration, and also I might just add a community where there is a lot of student accommodation, and we've really felt the absence of international students on those visas. I think Australians are really open to more immigration. I think they want to see...
Sounds like you would welcome an increase.
Look, what I would welcome is a national debate where we recognise that immigration has different nuances, different consequences and different approaches. And what we should do is get the right settings for Australia. I know you want to
just say yes. Just say yes.
Is immigration is positive?
When I don't give him a simple answer.
All right, okay. Dan Tehan, what about you? Should it be increased, skilled migration?
Well, the first thing, David, is we've got to make sure that we keep investing in apprenticeships, in skills and training to make sure that we've got as many Australians in work as we possibly can. Then what we've got to do is make sure that we target the skilled migration that comes into the country so that it drives employment further. So where there are skills that we need that we will know will expand businesses, create more jobs and more opportunities, that's where we really need to be focusing in on it.
I think we all get that. The question is, should it be increased further from where it is?
Well, at the moment, it's at 160,000. We've got to make sure that we're bringing in the right people with the right skills that's going to lead to us growing the economy, plus doing the investment in the right place. We also have to look at opportunities like we did with the UK Free Trade Agreement that we negotiated, where we were able to, with the United Kingdom, agree that young people would be able to move between Australia and the United Kingdom for 3 years if they're under 35 to either work or study. So there's opportunities like that which will also enhance opportunity for young people in Australia and young people in Britain. So they're the types of opportunities that we want to be looking for as we seek to make sure that we maximise employment here in Australia.
A nuanced answer as well. Let me just ask you, both of our politicians here tonight, about the story we heard today that the government has finally signed the deal with New Zealand to resettle A total of 450 refugees have been in offshore detention to New Zealand, 150 a year for the next 3 years. Dan Tehan, why didn't this happen 9 years ago?
Well, David, obviously we've got to negotiate these things. We've got to negotiate them in the right way, because the last thing you want to see is the... Well, David, what we've got to do is make sure that you get the arrangements absolutely right, because the last thing we want to see is a return to the boats coming, the deaths at sea that we saw, 1,200 people died. None of us want to see that. And so what we've made sure is that with all the arrangements that we've entered into, whether it was what we entered into with the Obama administration in the US, whether it's what we've done here with New Zealand, is to make sure that those settings are right and it's not going to lead to that illegal people smuggling.
Well, this is the issue, because the Prime Minister repeatedly said he was opposed to this deal with New Zealand, and he said that he didn't flip-flop on this. So what has changed? Has it got anything to do with the fact we're now on the cusp of an election and you're under pressure in those inner city seats from progressive independents?
No, it's got to do with being able to come to an arrangement where we know that it will keep our borders secure, and that's what we've done. It's why we entered into the arrangement that we did with the Obama administration. What we've been able to do is to make sure that we've put a stop to the illegal boat arrivals, and we've done that by making sure that whatever we've done, the arrangements we've entered into, have sent a very clear signal that there is no way that the boat should start again, and that will continue to be the approach that we're taking, because none of us want to see a return to what we saw historically under the previous Labor administration.
Well, Terri Butler, this won't cover all of those still in detention 9 years on. Should the rest of them be released and allowed to come to Australia if they can't go to New Zealand under this deal?
Well, David, before I answer your question, let me say that was utter nonsense from Dan. With respect, it was utter nonsense. In fact, what's happened is that people have lost years of their life because this government refused to accept a deal that has been on the table from New Zealand for years. Peter Dutton has, throughout that entire time, as has Scott Morrison, been making the same sorts of claims that Dan has just made now, that there was some sort of pull factor, that this would start people smuggling if they accepted the New Zealand settlement deal, and that was always nonsense, and it's still nonsense, and I'm surprised that even after the humiliating backdown that we've seen today, I'm surprised that Dan would try to run those lines.
So what about the rest that aren't covered by this? Should they be let go?
Well, David, I had... in my electorate, we had the Kangaroo Point APOD, the alternative place of detention, and it was a disgrace. We had people who were stuck in a hotel for months and months and months. And why were they in Australia? Because they had been medevaced here because they were in desperate need of medical treatment. And instead of caring for those people, this government allowed them to sit there and languish in that hotel. It was a disgrace. And I think, David, that most Australians, and I know that my electorate feels this way, would like to see a much more humane and more sensible approach from government.
So release those who can't be resettled? Release those who can't be resettled?
David, if someone's not a national security threat or some sort of safety risk, why not release them into the community? Why not have people in the community where they can be safe, where they can be with friends and supporters and loved ones, and where they can actually participate in our society? It's a no-brainer.
Minister, I just want to do a bit of a gear shift here and ask you about another story that broke late today. It's in relation to our region. The Solomon Islands has apparently signed an agreement with China that would allow greater Chinese police and even military presence in the Solomons. Some are worried this could mean the first Chinese military base in the Pacific in our backyard. No one from the government has yet been able to comment on this, so I do need to ask you about it. Is the government concerned about this development in the Solomons?
Yes, we are concerned, David, and what we've always wanted to ensure, and we've done this through our Pacific Step Up, is to make sure that everything we're doing is enhancing the sovereignty of Pacific nations, making sure that everything we're doing is to support and help them when it comes to their sovereignty, and all the assistance that we've given is absolutely in their national interests. And we're concerned that this isn't the case in this situation. Obviously, obviously it's just developing as today, so we're trying to get more detail around it, but it is a concerning development.
Is it a betrayal at all? Is that what you're suggesting?
No, I'm not suggesting that it's a betrayal. All I'm saying is it is concerning. We always have wanted to do everything we can through our Pacific Step Up to invest in a way that enhances the national interests and the sovereignty of our Pacific friends. We continue to do that through infrastructure loans, through assistance, whether it be around helping with their roads, whether it be helping with hospitals. But everything that we're trying to do is about enhancing the way of life of the people of the Pacific, and we want all countries doing that with how they deal with the Pacific. And our hope is that this is in the best interests of the Solomons, but we obviously need to get across the detail at a deeper level, but it does seem very deeply concerning.